Welcome to another episode of Mission Compliance, unleashing growth potential for defense contractors. In today's episode, we continue down the road of understanding CMMC, its regulations, and controls. Up next is CM.L2-3.4.4. Analyze the security impact of changes prior to implementation. We'll break down what this control means, why it matters, and how it impacts your organization's cybersecurity posture. We'll also provide practical insights and strategies for achieving compliance and securing your systems effectively. So whether you're a defense contractor aiming to win more contracts or simply someone interested in bolstering your cybersecurity knowledge, you're in the right place. You rang. We're joined once again today by Mike Frieder, President of On-Call Compliance Solutions and a CMMC Professional Assessor. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Hey, always a pleasure, Roman.
And it seems somewhat unbelievable considering how long it felt like it took us to get through Control Family number 1, that we're now halfway through Control Family number 4.
That's right. That's right. We are, once you make it out of that first control family, which, access and control is a huge piece of it, still a lot of content to go, but it's a lot easier when you're not on the first one.
I was going to say, we are nowhere near the end because there are 14 Control Families, and this is Control Family 4. And just wait until we get to Control Family 13. We'll be there for 16 weeks. Anyway, so with that being said, Control Family 4.4 is about analyzing the security impact of making certain changes. So with that being said, why is this control important?
Well, I got to tell you, I think it depends on your organization whether it's important. And I'm just gonna be really honest about it, right? Like we'll get to the answer and how to deal with the control and things like that. If you're a 5-person company, I don't really think this control is important. I think this control becomes important when the company starts to get probably above 25 to 30 people, maybe headed towards 50 to 100 people. Because at that point, when you start to change system settings, you start to affect more than a couple of people. You start to affect the entire system. And at that employee count, you get to a point where the system is large enough that there's a bigger system to secure. And at that point, I think analyzing the security impact of changes before you implement them is important. And I think that makes a very difficult control for smaller businesses, right? If you're 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, it's tough because now all of a sudden you have to implement real change management control, real risk management frameworks. There's not really anything you can do about that. I mean, you just have to do it. So I think in that regard, that's really where, this really does in fact become a significant thing. Analyzing the security impact of changes prior to implementation, what does it mean? Well, it means that before you just go change a setting, now you actually have to demonstrate through written documentation that you have considered the security impact of that change and decide if that's a good thing or a bad thing and it's acceptable based on risk and then move forward and do it. It's also something that can send an organization into paralysis around decision making if they are not careful, and that's not good. So 344 is a real double-edged sword. In a larger organization, it's the control that saves you from big time mistakes and knee-jerk reactions. In a smaller organization, it can hinder growth. It can really become very, very problematic. So yeah, basically, to implement it, you need a structured process that's integrated, into your change management and risk management frameworks, AKA, if we're trying to break this down into real world terms, right? We have statuses within our IT ticketing system that will say needs analysis or, security impact needs analysis, or change evaluation needed. And it'll send it up the chain to a manager, alert them that they need to get involved with the situation, and then take it from there. So, again, I think that's that really is a big challenge if you're a smaller business. But it doesn't matter how challenging it is, you have to do it. So even if you're 5 people, someone in that company is going to have to be in charge of being the change management person in order to comply with this. Um, Roman, tell me what the question was one more time. I think that's probably a good portion of the answer, but just so I can stay on topic somewhat, right? That's what I do. I waffle around aimlessly.
Ooh, waffles. Why is this control important?
Yeah. Why is it important? Again, like I said, if you're a small business, I think it's probably not important. I think if you're a larger business, it's unbelievably important because a change to one thing can affect the security of the whole system. Here's a great example, literally from this morning in our company, I have a new computer, and our standard applied policy is that we don't allow USB storage devices. We just simply don't allow it per policy unless there is a managerial approval to allow for the use of that. Because we just want to, again, this states you have to control USB devices. Well, when I shoot marketing videos like the one that we're doing, there are certain videos that I shoot on a high def camera using an SD card. And for those specific videos, even though they never touch our CUI enclave, I do happen to use a computer that is in our CUI handling enclave to take information from an SD card over to our marketing video folder or whatever, right? Um, and with the security policies that we have in place, that's just simply not allowed. And so you have to go and ask for a specific override on this specific computer to allow for that to happen. Now, per our company policies, that's okay as long as I have managerial approval. Well, hey, I own the company, right? Well, guess what? Even as the owner, I can't go make that change. That's against our policies. And so that has to go through our change management people, which includes our executive vice president of compliance. That's freaking annoying. I mean, it's just right. But here's the deal. I don't sit every day and manage the compliance within on-call. All right. I don't, right? I've got a marketing and sales role here. I'm the CEO. I dictate a lot of policies, but I am not the person who is in charge of making sure that our company is compliant. Maybe an interesting scenario. I have a person, as a matter of fact, we have teams of people who do that to make sure that if they turn this setting on for me, so that I can, move the data in my preferred way, which is, in my home office, utilizing a USB, transfer off an SD card. Is that going to break our company's compliance? I'm not that big of a company, 25, 30 employees, but that's a good thing. We have compliance as a company. I don't want to mess that up for our company. I need someone who's got an eye on compliance to say, yes, that's okay, we'll approve this and document the reason why. And that's just, again, to be compliant with NIST SP 800-171 and to be CMMC certified, that's what you have to do. So that's what we've done. We have we're sending that through change control, and change control eventually, hopefully, will approve it unless there's some gross violation of compliance, in which case they would deny it. But it's got to be considered by somebody. And so that is an example of the way that it should be working. They are actively, right now analyzing the security impact of that change to disallow the usage of external USB storage, specifically on my computer, so that I can deal with, this thing that I have to do every week for marketing. And hey, another example of that is, we have implemented a system to review all outgoing marketing to ensure that CUI doesn't make it in there. Well, there's no one in marketing that touches CUI except me, the owner. Doesn't matter. Still got to have it documented. Still have to be able to show an assessor a formal process for this. And if you're out here and you're in the defense industry looking at this and you're going, Mike, you got to be kidding me. I'm not kidding you. This is what it takes. You want to be trusted with national security level stuff and be a defense contractor and get those defense dollars. You just got to play by the rules. So I'm no different. You're no different. And I think it's a control that really allows us to understand and mandate that there is a formal change management policy in place. For dealing with this kind of stuff. So hopefully that answers the question, Roman.
I mean, yeah, and to that point, we had a situation, a month or two ago where, even though, like you said, nobody in the marketing department, which is the entirety of the people on this podcast at the moment, uh, doesn't touch CUI. And I don't, and you do only because you're the owner, but not for marketing purposes. I needed an external hard drive to store all of the marketing stuff, and I was like, hey, is this okay? Because I knew that there was a rule about external stuff. I was like, hey, is it okay that I have one? And I had to get it approved by you, even though I don't touch CUI. I may never will, probably never will, but because that's the policy, I had to be like, hey, can is it okay that I have one of these? And I had to get it approved by you.
Yep, 100%. And it's critical to understand that even and by the way, that's outside of our CUI handling enclave. So we apply the same rules, generally speaking, the same policies in and out of our enclave because ultimately our whole company really is NIST compliant. But we're only looking to get a specific enclave approved for CMMC certification and assessing and all that other kind of stuff. There's you have to watch where those policies flow in your company because they can be, you know, the security impact of having those policies can be substantial, right? There are some limited uses where we've got to have those USB portable storage devices in place. So very interesting and definitely a lot of what seems like such a simple control because there's only one assessment point, really actually in fact spurs an entirely new way of operating for most companies. And that to me is another one of those. I talk about this all the time, Roman, with our clients. We always talk about this. We talk about the idea that there's going to be a substantial maturing of the organization when they go through this process. And there's nothing we can do about it. The DoD mandates it, and it will make you a better company. We certainly are an example of that. We are a better company because of the way that this thing is rolled out. Um, so yeah, it's a thing for sure.
Gosh, I love a good segue. Speaking of that one assessment point, what is it?
Yeah. So obviously, there's only one assessment point here. The assessment point is determine if the security impact of changes to the system is analyzed prior to implementation. If we were to give you a sample answer, we'd say security impacts are analyzed and considered both during ticket processing and during quarterly risk management meetings. In our company, those are our 2 points that we analyze things. One is during ticket activity, right? So when a ticket goes in the system, we're going to say, hey, we need something handled. When it's going to flow through different statuses and it's going to, ultimately get approved or denied and handled through the ticketing system. Full documentation on what happened has to happen. Then there's quarterly we look at the changes that have occurred throughout the system in the last quarter and we analyze that and we go, is this okay? And if it is, great, and if it's not, okay, that's then we need to go back and look at the risk management factors on that and analyze whether or not that is a good thing. But what an assessor is going to do is they're going to say to you, show me where you're actively analyzing um, changes that are being made throughout the system and what their security impact is. What you want to point to in that circumstance is you want to pull up your change management policy. So here's a hint, you got to have a change management policy. And then you've got to go and be able to show an example or two, maybe out of your ticketing system, emails, whatever, to say, hey, look, here's a change we made. It was analyzed. This is what it looks like when it gets analyzed. This is real. Failure to have that done is disastrous. I will just tell you, you've got to have that written policy there to back it up, and you've got to be acting on that policy. Um, and so again, uh, what would be in a formal change management policy? Well, we can step through that, right? So we want to define the process for requesting, evaluating, approving, and implementing changes. So that's got to be done. And then include specific requirements for security impact analysis, right? So there's got to be some points there where we're describing how are we doing a security impact analysis? How do we know whether security will be impacted as a change based on that change? What's that procedure look like? And then ensuring the policy aligns with other organizational policies, including cybersecurity and compliance. This is huge, right? We want to make sure this policy doesn't accidentally nullify some other policy or procedure. And that's the tough one because I'll tell you, as you change things in a system, you got to make sure those changes don't conflict with each other. And then there's defining roles and responsibilities. Who's the change requester? Who's the change manager? Who's the security analyst? Who's the approver? Establish a security impact analysis process, right? So, you know, what are we going to do first? We're going to scope the change, document what's changing, why, and its potential effects on systems, data, or processes. We're going to identify potential risks. We're going to evaluate dependencies. We're going to test it in a controlled environment if that's something that you guys do. I think that's another place where small businesses and large businesses really differ. If you're a small business, you can get away with maybe just doing it live and you can flip the switch backwards in a lot of cases or restore. Boy, if you're a big business, some of our large customers, they have to have three different environments. They've got to have a test, they've got to have a sandbox, and they've got to have a production environment. The testing is for them to test out new things. The sandbox is for them to sample, apply updates to make sure it's not going to blow up their production system. And then their production system is their production system. If they can't be down, they've got to be able to have that system and know that if they apply an update in the sandbox and it goes okay, then it's approved to move to production. So when you start getting into larger systems, you're running them in triplicate. That's a risk management approach. And so you want to use a risk-based approach when it comes to the approvals here. And then, of course, you want to document everything, right? Maintain the records of change requests and their rationale, the results of the security impact analysis, approvals and decisions made during the process. This documentation supports accountability, traceability, and regulatory compliance, of course. Then you got to train people. And then you got to integrate tools and support automation and implement a review and approval workflow. Monitor the changes after implementation and conduct periodic audits and refinements. This is another thing is just because you made the change doesn't mean you don't have to go back and audit it later. So all of those things I think are there's just a ton of steps in this. And I think that maybe we should do a separate podcast on the change management protocol, but it is not small. It's not a low impact sort of thing. And it's something that, ultimately does bring a lot of different steps. And the thing is, just to comply with this one little assessment point, you've got to be able to demonstrate all that stuff. It's another area where if you are in a position that you're a small business, it's almost tougher to comply with this than if you're in a large business, right? With a lot of bodies involved in this stuff. So yeah, a lot going on there. And to meet this, it really hones in on the idea that you need a change management policy, and that change management policy includes security impact analysis or SIA, security impact analysis. Um, and again, if you're listening to this podcast and your like head is spinning, you're normal, okay? Like it's not like this is intuitive stuff when you're going through the controls and reading through here and going, yeah, I just look at it, right? Like that's how the real world works. But this isn't the real world. This is a government audit, and you're winning government money here, and so you've got to act like it. And if you're struggling with it, and you're beating your head against the wall, and you don't know what to do, the good news is you can just reach out to us. I think that's one of our just absolutely major advantages is we've already figured this stuff out. I mean, this is years and years in the making that we've developed our systems for helping people get compliant and have all this documentation and teaching them about their systems. We've got it. We know how to do this, right? And we have it all in a done for you package. We just have to train you on it and hand it over. It's beautiful. And of course, you've got to work the system, but that's that. So, I think from that perspective, if you're struggling out there with compliance, you're listening to this podcast trying to get it figured out, all I can tell you is give us a call. It doesn't cost anything to find out how we can help. Um, we've got certified compliance experts, that are on standby to talk with defense contractors to help them figure out, does it make more sense to bring us in? Does it make more sense to do it on their own? What makes sense? Can we help them in some way? We're here for you guys. So yeah, one little assessment point, but a whole lot to consider there.
So, with that one assessment point, with this rather short control, what are the potential difficulties, if any, of enacting this in an organization?
Massive difficulties. I mean, I think this is one of the hardest controls to really implement for most businesses. Most businesses just are flying by the seat of their pants on a day-to-day basis. And I'm the perfect example. I'm the CEO and I go, "Hey man, I need this done." And somebody jumps and they do it. Can't have that anymore. You can't act like that because it has to go through change control. It has to be analyzed, and then it has to be approved by the right people. And it's interesting, especially if you're a business owner listening to this, and you're a small business owner, um, you got to swallow some humble juice because at a certain point in time, you're wrestling and beating your head against the wall, but you're going to invalidate compliance if you just demand they drop everything and do it now. And it's really counterproductive to doing business. But at the same time, it's a really, really good practice because if you don't do that, then when it comes to that security impact, you invalidate one thing and you can really mess up security to the point where you'll harm the company. I'll give you a great example. It used to happen more often, but when we were much, much, much smaller, I would watch my security engineers put in an any rule into firewalls, and they'd forget, and so that allows anything in or out. It would solve the problem because no more ports are blocked. They couldn't figure out what port was causing the problem, and they'd leave it. And then in an audit, we'd come back later and find it, thankfully, very quickly. But we had to stop doing that because yeah, it solves the problem temporarily, but the security impact is massive. Just leaving a firewall wide open, and all of a sudden, you have no security. Those are the kinds of things that really have to be deeply considered, um, even by small businesses, and it's why this thing exists.
Absolutely. So those are our three main questions about, and we stretched this one out pretty good, but those are our three main questions for this really short control. I think I don't think there's any competition. This is probably the shortest control in the whole bunch. It's
Yeah,
hard to
there's
get
not.
shorter. It's hard to get shorter than this. If it was shorter than this, it wouldn't exist. Um, but
Yeah, it's interesting. It is short, and I think there are not many controls that only have one assessment point. But the reality of this control is small thing, was it big things come in little packages, right? So even though it's small, the reality of this is it's a magnificent change for most defense contractors out there.
But even though we're an incredible 81 episodes deep, that's not going to stop us from doing our favorite part of the podcast, and that's ending with a silly question. This one is all about analyzing security impact and being aware of changes. If you analyze the security impact first, or I'm sorry, if you don't analyze the security impact first, but you say you did, could you pass a lie detector test?
No, and I'm going to tell you, you're going to fail CMMC certification and you're going to fail an audit too. I was, and again, we hear this from time to time. We talk with people, they kind of, they're interested in getting our assistance, or they've been told by somebody up the corporate chain they need to get with this. They look at it, they go, oh, on call, you cost money. We're going to try to do it internally. And we always see them back a year or two later, by the way. It always happens. It's inevitable. Um, it's very difficult to get this on your own without professional help. Um, I think that if you are trying to do this on your own without having gone through this before, the bottom line is even looking through the assessment guide, we've discovered it is not intuitive what an assessor is really looking for. The wording is just not there. It's a really poorly worded assessment guide in many places that does not set out with clarity what an assessor is actually going to ask you for. It would be easy, for instance, on this control if it said, hey, an assessor is going to want to see your change management policy and that you've got a security impact analysis portion of that policy. The problem is that doesn't exist. It just doesn't. Like that's not, as a matter of fact, let me see if I can't look up. I'm just going to very briefly see if I can pull, what is an assessor looking for on this control. I'll see if I can pull up the answer of what it says they're looking for. But it's like you just wouldn't really figure that they're looking, yeah, assessors looking for evidence and practices that demonstrate the organization is effectively analyzing the security impact of changes before implementation. Below are the key aspects an assessor will evaluate. They're looking for documented processes and procedures, confirm the organization has a formal documented process for analyzing the security impact of changes. The fact that what they're really looking for is a policy, it doesn't really explicitly state that. Um, and I think that's really what the just, head on brick wall problem is when you're trying to figure this stuff out, is that it doesn't just explicitly go, oh yeah, you got to show them a policy that says this. Um, and why don't they do that? Because, well, every organization is going to handle this differently. Some people aren't going to have a written policy. Maybe they're going to have some kind of a system where it's written and guide you through it. Like a technical change management system. Some people are going to use written policies because they don't have anything technical. So there's only so much they can really write in the assessment. That's why it takes a human to assess this stuff. So is a great example. Some companies are going to have testing environments. Some companies are not going to have testing environments. They're going to have staging and testing all within the production environment. So, it really and truly is um, a highly variable process. And, I think that's where a lot of the challenges are.
Absolutely. And that wraps up another great episode of Mission Compliance. We hope our discussion today has provided you with valuable insights, practical strategies, and inspiration to navigate the ever evolving world of defense. We'd like to extend our appreciation to Mike for coming to us and talking to us about the importance of this small but mighty control. Thanks, Mike.
Hey, always a pleasure, Roman.
But the conversation doesn't end here. We encourage you to continue exploring these topics and connect with us via our social media channels, and that is On Call Compliance Solutions on YouTube. I think it's On Call Solutions. Uh, Share your thoughts, ask questions, and encourage fellow listeners using the hashtag Mission Compliance Podcast. If they haven't already, what should they do, Mike?
Well, they should subscribe, and they should definitely tell a friend to come on and listen to the podcast because we deliver a whole lot of amazing information. It's going to make it a whole lot easier for defense contractors to go and get compliant.
There you go. Hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. And also, we'd appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate and review the show. Your feedback helps us to continue to bring you thought provoking episodes and high quality content. Join us next time as we delve further into the dynamic world of defense, security, and industry innovation. Until then, take care, stay informed, and make compliance your mission. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.